on base or at the plate. It was no different Thursday night. It made it 9. Howard Johnson's 2-run home run in the 9th inning forced it into overtime. And George Foster's single to left in the top of the 10th. That scored Wally Backman from second base, and the Mets had won another tough one-run game, 5-4. Last night, the spell was broken. Not only a shutout fired by Dwight Gooden, but good night Ray Knight. He hit 2 home runs to power the New York Mets to one of the few laughers between the two, 9-0. And today continues with Danny Cox and Sid Fernandez.
National Broadcasting Company, now in its 6th decade, of bringing you baseball's memories. Milestones. Baseball's majesty. And baseball's magical moments. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today, from Busch Memorial Stadium in St. Louis, it's the New York Mets versus the St. Louis Cardinals. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Miller Beer. Miller made the American way since 1855. By Castrol, the motor oil engineered for smaller cars. And by United States Liberty Coins. Keep Liberty in mint condition with United States Liberty Coins.
From Busch Stadium in St. Louis, with temperatures in the 80s and things figuring to get even hotter as baseball's biggest rivalry is on. St. Louis Cardinals versus the New York Mets. Hi, everybody. I'm Vin Scully, along with Joe Garagiola. There you have it. The Cardinals have lost 5 in a row. The Mets have won 7 in a row, and they're still snarling at each other.
And off the field, I think the war of words is really interesting. Wally Backman of the Mets saying, hey, didn't we draw a bye until the playoffs? And then Whitey Herzog talking about the Mets, despite all their millionaires. He made a point of calling them millionaires. We out-defensed them and outscored them, this, that, and the other thing.
And Whitey also said the New York Mets are still the team to beat. After all, they think they won the last 2 years anyway. So we know it's for real.
It is for real, and the Cardinals, as you mentioned, not hitting, so they're really living that cliche, you can't steal first. They have to get on. Now, if they do get on today against Fernandez, I would look for him to really run because he does not have that good a move. They have been working with him, but, you know, the Cardinals do love to run.
And the Cardinals also come back with Danny Cox, who's out with a bad ankle. Danny making his first start of the year, looked very sharp in St. Petersburg a couple of weeks ago, so we'll see how he goes today.
And we have the added dimension, I think, of the crowd reaction to Keith Hernandez, who played here and then went to New York. They kind of gave him a going over last night.
They acted like he wasn't even in the ballpark, huh? Yeah, they ate him alive every time he came to the plate. We'll get to the pregame stats and stories, the lineups, and everything else about the Mets and the Cardinals, all coming up right after this.
That's Dave Johnson. He's going to give us the lineup today.
Dykstra in center, leading off. Bachman hitting second, playing second.
Is that a pretty good hit-and-run combination for you?
It sure is. I'll run both those guys anytime.
Okay.
Hernandez at first, hitting third. Strawberry in right, followed by Carter.
Will you let any of those three hit 3 balls and no strikes?
I sure will. Anytime I got a runner in scoring position, they'll be hitting 3-0. And then I follow up Carter with Danny Heap in left, then followed with Ray Knight at third base.
What are you feeding him? He's red hot.
Well, it's just refreshing for me. He had such a terrible year last year, and he's really been carrying our club this year. Great guy. Following Knight, I got another third baseman who's been pushed out of a job by Ray Knight, Johnson at shortstop, followed by the pitcher Fernandez.
Thank you, Davey.
Defensively for the Cardinals, and that's quite an outfield. Coleman, McGee, and Landrum. If they keep the ball in the ballpark, Whitey Herzog says if they can't catch it, it can't be caught. Pendleton at third base. What can you say about Ozzie Smith at shortstop? Hers at second base. Clark, and behind the plate, Mike Heath. and he has really been doing a job handling these pitchers.
Well, on the mound is Danny Cox, a widely heralded injury suffered in spring training, jumping off a 3-foot seawall with a fishing pole in one hand, landed awkwardly in the sand, and had a chip fracture of his right ankle. He pitched briefly in a rehab game, 7 innings, no runs, and so he's starting today.
Lenny Dykstra then will lead it off, and with Cox having a bad ankle, a good leadoff man, he'll try to find out if he can field his position and try to bunt maybe.
And there he goes. He bunts it foul out of play, so right on the money. It is also interesting to test Danny Cox in the first inning because he allowed 25 first-inning runs. That would be second high in the National League. Shane Rawley was the guy who had the most trouble in the first inning. So you try and move Danny Cox immediately. The Mets have won 7 straight. 1 ball and 1 strike. On April the 14th, the Mets lost to the Cardinals in 13 innings. They took 3 in a row from the Phils, 2 from the Pirates, and the first 2 of this series from St. Louis. He didn't bunt.
It's very difficult to bunt with this artificial surface. It's very hard here, and with Pendleton at third base, he'll have to try to drag it. I tell you, you got to like this Dykstra. He's the kind of a guy, if he's in your uniform, you love him, and if you're playing against him, you got to really, you wonder about it.
2 balls, 1 strike, and he goes the other way. He takes him deep to right. Back goes Landrum. It's over his head and over the wall. There's a guy who's going to bunt to test his ankle and takes him deep for a home run. What a way to begin.
Can you believe that? He tried to bunt once. He faked the bunt, and then Cox figuring he's just going to try to punch it in there. And he lays it in there, and Dykstra hits a tremendous home run for him. And is he a happy youngster? Look at him.
Watch, that ball will carry out at the 383 sign. The only question was whether a fan would lean over the wall and touch it or whether it would get over the wall. And it just made it.
With that center field camera, it really showed that was a BP fastball, a batting practice fastball, right down the middle.
And now here's Wally Backman fouling it away. I'm in here leading the major leagues in hitting. So they are red hot with the bat. The Mets are also having the best start in their history. No Mets team has ever had a record of 10-3 after the first 13, and if they win today, that would be their record. And there's the drag bunt, but he hit it hard and foul, so he'll come back and try it again. Foul ball. Clark can't believe it, but Lee Wire called it foul immediately.
From home to first, obviously, it's the plate umpire, past first base to first base umpire, and Clark is arguing with the first base umpire, but it was Lee Wire who made the call.
You can take another look. Watch Clark.
Looks awful close to me.
He leaned over and fielded the ball, which was then in the lane. And, of course, Lee Wire had a good shot at it, even though Clark was arguing with the first base umpire, Dutch Renner. 1-2. Backman is one of those fellows who has an incredible difference in batting against right-hand pitching and left-hand pitching. He's a 300 hitter against right-handers, a 100 hitter against left-handers. That's the greatest differential of any hitter in the National League. 200 points. 2-2. 3-2.
One of the big strengths of Danny Cox is his control. He just doesn't walk a whole lot of people, and here he is giving up a home run, and now he's 3-2 on Backman, and he gets to the meat of the order. That's danger.
And that's slapped, and a great leaping catch by Terry Pendleton. Pendleton with those thick legs, somewhat bowed, but somehow he was able to get high in the air up to the top rung of the ladder to handle that one.
He just timed that perfectly. If he goes up any sooner, he just doesn't get it. You can't get any higher than that. That was a slam dunk jump.
And here are the boos now for Keith Hernandez. Hernandez was traded from the Cardinals of June of 1983, and until the start of this year, he was hitting .333 against his old club. They have kept him pretty quiet so far. He has just 1 hit. And he picked up 1 for 9, so he now is 2 for 14 this year. Not done much against St. Louis. 1-1. Line drive whistled into center. So look at the three pitches. A home run to Dykstra, a leaping catch by Pendleton of the ball hit by Bachman, and now a single by Hernandez.
He just went right with that pitch. You could see it was to the outside part of the plate. If he tries to pull that ball, it's a ground ball to the second baseman, Herr. But Hernandez and Whitey Herzog keeps charts, and when you look at Hernandez's chart, he uses the entire field.
It is interesting to look at the New York Mets lineup and realize you have Strawberry hitting behind Hernandez and in front of Carter. Fouled away. Davy Johnson knows that Whitey Herzog is short in the bullpen. Without Jeff Lottie, he's overbalanced. And Davy Johnson said, I would much rather have Hernandez and Strawberry back-to-back. They hang in very well against left-handers, rather than Strawberry and Heath back-to-back. But Whitey wants to burn up a left-hander against these two, fine. And if he wants to wait and use a left-hander against Heath, that's fine. Without Jeff Lottie, Herzog is really minus one very important card. No pun intended. Ball one.
And Davy Johnson also gets the benefit of Carter hitting behind Strawberry, that Strawberry gets better pitches to hit. With Foster hitting behind Strawberry, they will pitch around Strawberry.
Darrell hitting .261. Home run and 6 RBI. Two and two. Talking about contrast with these two teams, Ray Knight has hit 6 home runs for the Mets. The entire Cardinal ball club has hit 5. There's Ray, off to a great start of his career. 2 and 2. Off speed, and that's whacked into right field. So the big leaguers are going after Danny Cox. We mentioned that he looked good in St. Petersburg. He pitched in a rehab game against some kids down there. But this is a long way from St. Petersburg.
That's a very tough pitch. I have to second guess it, and I see Mike Heath out there. It may be that Cox changed on his own because you got the big hole between first and second with the base runner on, the first baseman holding the runner. You throw that slow curveball to a fellow like Strawberry, he's able to get that bat around and pull it in the hole. There you see the defense, and this is a let-up pitch, and it's to the outside part of the plate, and he's able to pull it in the gap. I'd be willing to bet right now that Cox changed on his own.
Well, here's Gary Carter. He had a 10-game hitting streak snapped last night, but he did walk 3 times and scored twice. If the Mets get off to a big jump today, and they have Hernandez and Strawberry out on the line, they would just be picking up from where they left off last night. Remember, they pummeled the Cardinals 9-0. That is not the way these two teams usually play. Anything but. In the last 21 games, there have been 8 extra inning games and 12 decided by 1 run. So last night's game was really a departure of form. Right. Gary Carter. He has 9 RBIs. And look at, he has 2 more out there to pick up if he can in Hernandez and Strawberry. Fastball in the dirt. We talk about the rivalry between these two teams, and it really starts in spring training. And Mike Rourke is going out to talk to Danny Cox. First of all, the Cardinals and the Mets share the same facilities in spring training. And where the Cardinals are covered by the Midwestern press, they resent somewhat the big city media exposure that the New York Mets get, and the very fact of the big city and the big names on the ball club. So that kind of inspires dislike.
It's not hard when you see 8-10 sports writers coming in to cover you, and then when you have a fellow like Dwight Gooden, who we're looking at, copy everything he does, on or off the field for that matter.
The Mets leading by 2.5 games. That'll cause more dislike than anything. Beaten foul off to the right of the plate. 1-2 to count. We mentioned earlier that Whitey Herzog is short because Lottie is hurt. Remember, Jeff Lottie had 19 saves last year. Rick Owenby is going to be sent to the bullpen if they need a right-hander by Whitey. he has really come up short, and he's going to send a starter down.
You know, you talk about 19 saves by Lottie. Everybody talks about the 21 victories of Andujar, and they seem to overlook the 19 saves. That's a lot not to have on your ball club. Whitey going into this season, 19 saves, that'll make you a pretty smart manager.
1-2 the count to Gary Carter. Hernandez at second, Strawberry at first, and the Mets are already out in front on a home run by Len Dykstra, of all people.
Interesting. Cox has not been pitching. Heath is working with him probably for at least the first time that I know of, and they're having trouble getting together. Cox has backed him off twice as to the pitch selection.
Be interesting to see about Carter, a power hitter who doesn't strike out a lot. Fastball fouled away. He was the only power hitter who was among the top 10 toughest in the league to strike out last year. I mean, you're looking at a fella with 32 home runs. The next most powerful man on the toughest to fan top 10 was Ken Landreau, who had a dozen home runs. That's a remarkable tribute to Gary Carter. Fastball missed, and I guess that's a pretty good indication if you can take that.
He really laid off a tough pitch. But I'm thinking about the situation Heath is in, because they can tell you all the information that they have accumulated, the Cardinal coaches, but you have to find out for yourself.
2-2. Change. Hit foul. Straight change, too.
See, these are things that what does the pitcher like to do when he's in the jam? Now, for example, here is Carter with base runners at first and second. First inning, Cox has been touched for a home run, and this change is in a terrible spot. It's up over the belt, and that's just danger zone.
2 balls, 2 strikes. Now he goes 3-2. Danny Bradford Cox, who was born in Northampton, England, in a lot of trouble in St. Louis.
Your statistic may come into play on this decision right now.
Yeah, 3-2, 1 out. You would figure that certainly the runners would be going, even though Danny Heap is waiting on deck. So let's see if Johnson, who uses a computer, and he knows Carter is tough to strike out. Gary with a bad knee, so they might run to try and stay out of the double play, and they don't go. And the ball is hit in the air to left center, and hooking. McGee is not going to get it. By the time it is retrieved, the ball is still in play. It looked like a fan might have touched it. 1 run is in. The only surprise, the fact that the runners were not going. So Carter doubles in Hernandez. It is 2-0 New York.
And that ball was really hit hard, because McGee in center field did get a good jump on that ball, and you have to believe Whitey, if it stays in the park, it'll be caught. This one was not. He really got all of it. Curveball out over the plate, and McGee doesn't even come close to it, has to play the carom, and he plays that perfectly.
We were wondering if a fan could have leaned over and touched that one, but they can't get to it with that wire netting out there. So that meant the ball was live, and Strawberry stopped at third anyway. Here's ball 1 to Danny Heap, and boy, Cox is in a heap of trouble. Tim Conroy gets up and begins to loosen up. He came over here in the Andujar deal with Mike Heath. So first base open, and Danny Cox struggling to stay in. A high change. Ball 2.
They're playing the right side in, and Cox is not able to get that change of pace where he wants to. When you talk about Danny Cox, as far as the scouting report, his fastball is not that impressive on the sidelines, but very impressive from the mound, because it's much quicker than it really looks, because he makes it effective with his change of speeds. He has good change of speeds. He has not shown that, though, in the first inning. The pitch to Strawberry was not a good pitch. The 2-2 pitch to Carter was not a good pitch. His control is one of his strengths. He is really struggling out there.
Well, we talked about all his troubles in the first inning, and here he is putting it all on the line. Another changeup, and it's hit into right center field for a base hit. And it was a bad change. 1 run is in, and they're going to send Carter in. Hurst throw is high, and the New York Mets have put 4 up there before the Cardinals can even catch their breath.
And
bad pitch.
No doubt about that, Ben, and give Buddy Harrelson a lot of credit, because Carter on the base hit broke immediately, and he was stopping at third, and Harrelson motioned him in, and that play unfolded very slowly because Landrum didn't think that Carter was coming. He must have caught a peek of him stopping and fired the ball into the infield, and Carter was able to come in.
What also helped, too, was Landrum shied back, afraid that that ball would take an AstroTurf pop over his head. So all of that was taken into consideration by Buddy Harrelson. And Danny Cox has given up 4. And for a ball club that has lost 5 straight, the Cardinals have to be in a state of shock.
Well, that change of pace, you might as well file it for a while. Getting them in trouble. Strawberry, now Heath.
Fouled away by Ray Knight, who is the major league's leader in home runs, equaling his entire output of last year. You know, another interesting thing about the Cardinal 5 home runs, all 5 home runs are hit against left-handers, all 5 against Montreal, and 4 of the 5 hit against Joe Heska, the other against Dan Schatzeder. Otherwise, Cardinals wouldn't have any at all. Danny Heath at first. Ground ball to short. Over to get it is Ozzie. Down to her for 1. Back to first, and they get the double play. But boy, has the damage ever been done. Danny Cox is welcome back to the active list in a very active first inning. At the end of a half, Mets 4, and the Cardinals trying to recover coming up.
I was just thinking about you.
Brute. It smells like a man.
The Cardinals not hitting at all, and Whitey Herzog hoping that a ball club that won 101 games last year can come back from a deficit of 4. Coleman, McGee, and her, with Jack Clark at first base, then Landrum, Heath, and Pendleton. Ozzie Smith hitting 8th, and the pitcher Danny Cox. Interestingly enough, they're looking at Sid Fernandez, and the last time the Mets started a left-hander against the Cardinals was in September of 1984, and it was Sid Fernandez. He's making his 3rd start. He had no decision against Philadelphia. He was wild. He walked 7. Then he combined and went 8 innings, got help from Roger McDowell to shut out the Phils 8-0. He did not face the Cardinals last year. Leading off, Vince Coleman. Ball 1.
Whitey Herzog simply says we're not hitting, but Vin, when you see it written out like I have in front of me, it is scary. In the 3 previous games this year against the Mets, the 1-2-3-4 combination of Coleman, McGee, Her, and Clark are 9 for 54, 167 with 2 RBIs.
2 RBIs. That's the real shocker. Ball 2. Tommy Her, who had over 100 RBIs, hitting in the number 3 slot again this year, has 1 RBI. And Jack Clark in the cleanup spot has 2 RBIs on 2 home runs. They had only 1 man get past first base last night against Dwight Gooden. So they have just come dead in the water, at least for the moment. However, they are against a young left-hander who's very erratic. And Coleman trying to get aboard and get something started against a pitcher who can be very, very wild. Cardinals haven't lost 6 in a row since April of '84, and they went on to lose 7 in a row that year. And he is opened up by walking Coleman. And, of course, that's going to give Davey Johnson a lot of gray hairs in the maturing process of the big kid from Maui, Hawaii. Here comes Willie McGee, who had a few words to say about the New York Mets. The whole season, it seemed like we were chasing them. Reading the papers, you'd think the Mets had won, not us. Of course, what happened was Danny Cox beat the Mets in game number 159. Beat him 4-3. Otherwise, they were neck and neck going right down to the wire. Coleman at first. This speedy club has just stolen 1 base in the last 5 games.
Nobody's been on, according to Whitey. He said the only guy he could run was the groundskeeper.
Look at Coleman. Imagine going 9 without stealing a base. Last year, his longest was 5. This is one thing I would expect the Cardinals will try to do is test Hernandez's move. Sid being taught all spring by Mel Stottlemyre and some of the better base runners in the Mets organization. There goes Coleman. The pitch is strike, and the throw way off line. So trailing 4-0, the leadoff man steals second base.
Well, that book that everybody talks about has been rewritten. We're going to have to come up with it. Carter had a good pitch to hit, but Coleman had such a to throw, rather, Carter did. But Coleman had such a big jump, he forced him to rush it, and you can see the throw was off. I mean, it's a straight steal, no doubt about it, and it's not even close.
So despite the score, you can expect the Cardinals to try and run Sid Fernandez out of the ballpark.
Now, there's nothing that takes the air out of the balloon quicker than what's happened here. You put 4 runs up on the scoreboard in the first inning, you feel good, you run out there, and your pitcher walks the guy, throws the ball to the next guy, stolen base. You're battling.
0-1. 1 ball and 1 strike. What the Mets did in spring training, they take a kid with 100 stolen bases in the minor leagues and put him on first and make him explore Fernandez's move. They had Mookie Wilson do it. They have a lot of fellas. And then they would tell Sid Fernandez what they saw, what tipped it off. And he has tried to iron it out, but it's so tough when it's on-the-job training. Little nubber back to Fernandez. That takes care of McGee, and Coleman holding at second.
Now, analyze what just happened here, Ben. Coleman walks on 4 pitches, steals the base. Fernandez throws 2 balls and no strikes to McGee,
third, number 28,
and now he throws him a slow curveball as he swings it.
Yeah, McGee with 1 home run, swinging from the heels and hits it back to the box. Boy, that's a shock right there, isn't it? Tommy Herr, over 100 RBIs last year. And look at that lonesome one. Bottom of the first inning, the Mets 4, Cardinals nothing. Now, Coleman stole second, down 4-0. He has a philosophy about stealing third. Right. He says you can get a bigger lead with more time to get back on pickoff. So he stole third base 26 times last year. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to do it down 4-0, but it's a thought.
Well, he's got himself a big lead. He's way on the artificial surface. Watch him, just he'll take 2 steps from there.
He's being held on by Wally Backman, the second baseman, really. 0-1. And he bluffs. He started to go. There's a base hit, but Coleman was going back towards the bag, so they'll hold him. He put on such a good bluff and stop that when the ball was hit up the middle, he couldn't score. First and third with 1 out, and watch him.
He gives it a good false start, and now he waits for the play. He sees it's a base hit, but the hesitation right there caused him to run. And you're down 4-0 in the first inning, and you got the power hitter, Clark, your 4th place hitter up there. You don't want to run yourself out of a run, so at third base, Nick Lavia holds him up, and it was a good play.
One thing that's holding up for Tommy Herr, and that is he is a much better hitter with men on base. Last year, 100 points better, and here he is with a base hit right away with a runner at second. So Jack Clark, the big guy coming up. 2 home runs, good for 2 RBIs. A shot smothered at third. Good play by Ray Knight to get a force at second. And what a play by Backman to somehow keep his foot on the bag. And Whitey Herzog will go out and argue with Ed Montague that Backman had come off the bag.
Tommy Herr argued on the play, and Knight really makes a sensational play, and the good big leaguer is not satisfied just to catch the ball. He wants to force out. And let's see if we can see. Boy, that's close. I'd have to see it again. He's off the base there, but where was he when he caught the ball?
Take another look.
Let's take another look at it.
Oh, it looked like it was off.
I tell you, I really...
The bag is kind of in the way in a sense on that shot.
Yeah, that first shot looked like he caught the ball off the bag.
Well, we do know it's 4-1 Mets. The Cardinals have Jack Clark at first and Tito Landrum at the plate. It is interesting with Herr and Clark struggling to get RBIs. Herr got a base hit with Vince Coleman at second, and Coleman couldn't score. Now Clark gets a shot that might have gone as a double and is turned into a force play, and he gets an RBI. And that's a strike to Landrum.
Clark has a slight groin pull and didn't take batting practice or fielding practice, so it might be a problem from him running.
1 ball and 1 strike to count. Tito lifts one to straightaway center. Len Dykstra is there. So the Cardinals get one. They might have gotten a whole lot, except for the glove of Ray Knight. His bat's been making news, but the glove did it today. And at the end of an inning, 4-1 New York.
When you're dealing with higher volumes of information and need answers fast, you search everywhere for solutions, but find it's hard to get on top of things.
Forster might have lost a step, but he's still pretty quick. I said to him before the game, are those glasses rose-colored? He said, no, that's when I was with Cincinnati. These are strawberry-colored.
Aha! Rose-colored, strawberry-colored.
Howard Johnson, followed by Sid Fernandez and then Len Dykstra. And it is 4-1 Mets, and we're in the top of the second inning. Johnson had the big home run in the 9th inning Thursday night with a man aboard to tie it up. And then Foster drove in the winning run in the 10th inning. Howard had a grand slam home run against Danny Cox last year after Cox had hit George Foster. 2-0.
They were going to platoon Johnson and Ray Knight, but Ray Knight's start just moved Johnson out of a job, and they've got him over at shortstop. He's played a little bit of shortstop, not a whole lot.
He started 5 games at short last year and bangs one into left field. So Danny Cox off to a very rough start. He gave up 4 runs, including 3 singles, a double, and a home run. And remember, Backman also lost a hit on a leaping catch by Terry Pendleton. And now the leadoff man Johnson singles to left. Tim Conroy was throwing back of him, and he's up again. And the batter is Sid Fernandez.
Sammy Herr really moving Pendleton in at third base. Get in on top of him.
How about those numbers? You see that? He's 3 for 5. The Mets have a pretty good pitching staff. So much so, they're willing to put up some money. The bunt. Mike Heath can't make a play, has to go to first, and Tommy Herr just did recover. He had gone back to back up for Clark and had to handle it.
That ball had tremendous spin on it, and Mike Heath had second base written all over it, but he couldn't find the handle. Once that ball hit the surface, now watch the backspin on it. I mean, he lays down a good bunt. He kind of pops it up. Now there's backspin on it, and Mike's going to grab it right here, but you see the tricky hop because of the spin, and I mean, he boxes it up. But he's still able to make the play at first base, although Tommy Herr, for some reason, was behind the bag. Why,
yeah,
I don't know.
I think he was trying to back up Jack Clark, who was even closer. So the sacrifice, Howard Johnson at second, and here's Len Dykstra, who said he was going to bunt to test Danny Cox, tried to and fouled it away, and then really tested Cox's patience by hitting it in the seats.
His favorite ball player is Rod Carew, and what a role model.
0-1 to count. Howard Johnson at second. 4-1 Mets, second inning. Change, and at least he got it low that time. 1-1.
I was talking to Dykstra, and we talked about many things, and he talked about the time that he tried to go into the ballpark to sneak in to see the inside of a locker room, and the security guy grabbed him, and they took him to jail. His mom had to go get him, and Carew called him about it.
2-1 to count. Yeah, you could mistake him anyway. Some young kid who is cutting class. He's 5'10", but he doesn't even look that big. Weighs 160. Out of Santa Ana and Garden Grove in Southern California. 2-1.
He'll hit 300 in the big leagues, this guy. He really will if he gets a chance to play. Because he just uses the whole ballpark, great speed, tremendous confidence.
Danny Cox is due to bat 4th when the Cardinals hit in the second inning. Roller to the right side to Tommy Herr. He'll go to Clark, and on the plate, Johnson advances to third. So Wally Backman will be coming up. Backman robbed of a hit on a leaping catch by Terry Pendleton. The Mets trying to make it 8 straight. They had 2 9-game winning streaks last year. When Dykstra hit that home run, it also brought to mind the Mets hit a half a dozen home runs in St. Louis last year. The only other club to hit that many, Montreal, so they like it here. However, the Mets and Cardinals met at Shea in 1 game. Extra inning game, the Cardinals won, and then they lost 2 more to the weather. So that means in August, the Cardinals and Mets will play a 6-game series at Shea. Fouled away. 2 doubleheaders.
Tough.
That'll be a war. schedule always plays such a big part. In August, for instance, the Mets will play 10 games in 10 days in 3 cities, go home and play 6 games in 4 days with the Cardinals, and then make a long trip to the West Coast. Ground ball to the right side, plugged up nicely by Tommy Herr to get him. Boy, and he made it look easy. What a nice play. Tommy Herr having to get there, short hop the ball on the dead run like that, then twist the upper torso and get it to first. And at the end of an inning and a half, 4-1 New York.
Presenting the 4Trax 200SX from Honda.
Vinny said to me, I want to ask you a favor, and I thought, boy, he wants me to hit against him. He really wants to wish his sister, Barbara Jones, happy birthday. So he's thinking about you, Barbara. That's what he wanted me to do, and I did it.
Well, he's becoming a thinking man's pitcher as Mike Heath takes his stride. I'll tell you something about Dwight Gooden, and for all the baseball men watching the game tonight, when was the last time you saw a power pitcher, and I mean power pitcher, go 9 innings and pitch less than 100 pitches? That's what he did last night. I think we ought to call him Hooks Gooden. He made 96 pitches in shutting out the Cardinals last night. Looking at Gooden and now seeing Mike Heath. Down goes Mike. Mike wore number 16 at Hillsborough High School in Tampa, and he was such a great athlete, they retired his uniform number. And who came along who wanted number 16? He didn't get it in high school. Dwight Gooden. Heath wearing number 5 for St. Louis, and Gooden has that elusive 16 that he wanted way back at Hillsborough High. 1 down, and Terry Pendleton coming up. Pendleton made that leaping catch of the ball hit by Backman, or the Mets might have had a ton in the first inning. They're leading 4-1. Fouled away. 0-1. And there's another fellow who figures to drive in some runs who has just 1. But we shouldn't really look for the Cardinals to hit home runs anyway. They have not been in the top half of the list since 1967. And you know, the last time a Cardinal ball club led the league in home runs, it was 1944. That's a ball hit into center, and it hangs for Dykstra. 2 down. Let's get an update from New York. Go to Marv Albert.
Thank you, Vin. And at Yankee Stadium, Bob Shirley replaced the ailing Ed Whitson, who was supposed to start at home for the Yanks today, but Shirley knocked out in the first. Pat Tabler with this 2-run double for Cleveland. Indians lead the Yankees 3-0. They're in the bottom of the first. Back to Vin and Joe.
And the batter now is Ozzie Smith, who pulls one deep, but it took him foul and out of play. So Ed Whitson has an upset stomach. Shirley starts, and now Lou Piniella has an upset stomach. It's an epidemic.
Lack of runs will be contagious.
Here he is, the Wizard of Oz, who led the shortstops in fielding for the 4th time in the last 5 years. You know, someday we're going to be able to tape it so we can show the folks how Ozzie Smith warms up taking infield. It is truly remarkable, especially on AstroTurf. He practices charging a high hopper and practices short hopping the ball. He's the only infielder I see who will end short hopping it one-handed and then throwing. It's quite a show he puts on. 1-2. Chased a bad ball and pays the price for it. Ozzie had never struck out more than 49 times in a year, but he would if he kept swinging at pitches like that. We'll be back after these messages from your local station. 1 in favor of the Mets in the 3rd inning. Talking about sending along best wishes, Bill Robinson wants to send along his love to his mother, Nellie, who is celebrating her birthday today, and we're delighted to do it. Bud Harrelson over at 3rd, who doesn't know anybody celebrating a birthday today.
Yes, he does. He did a great Porky Pig happy birthday to Christopher, John Gonzalez's boy.
Okay.
We got a little social thing going here, a little Rona Barrett.
Keith Hernandez, Darryl Strawberry, and Gary Carter. 4 runs on a half a dozen hits for the Mets. Cardinals 1 run, 1 hit. Change, ball 1. When asked about the 2 top hitters he has seen so far in the National League, Mike Heath said his number 1 would be Keith Hernandez, and number 2, Andre Dawson. Of course, he hasn't seen everybody yet. 1-1. Big crowd on hand. They had over 45,000 last night, and temperature in the high 80s. They set a record in St. Louis yesterday, 92 degrees. The only thing absent, humidity. It's very dry. Ball 2.
They're talking about drawing possibly 2,750,000?
Yep.
Maybe even an outside chance of 3 million.
You know, Whitey Herzog has a theory. If you want to find out how successful a manager is, look at his club's attendance. That's a ball around the plate, and he steps on the bat and drops it. Boy, did he fight that. First he bumped into Hernandez, then he stepped on the bat, and all the while he's fighting the bright sky.
He never had that ball. It was a tough high sky. You could see him fight it. The bat threw him off. Right here, he still doesn't have it. You can see he doesn't have the confidence. He's battling it right there, and there he's hoping. You can see him blink his eyes almost, kind of turn his head sideways. You just don't do that if you got it all away. Now he bumps Hernandez. Look where the bat is. Steps on it. Now watch him turn his head. Right there is where he was losing it.
And he will draw an error.
I never could understand that. I think that's a stupid rule.
Well, he got the error. So the Cardinals, who had made 6 errors all year, charged with another. And the count 2-2 to Keith Hernandez. Change line off the glove of Tommy Herr. So Hernandez really had a charmed at bat. First the foul ball off Heath Smith, and then the bullet that got away from Herr. Base hit.
Right fielder Darryl Strawberry.
7 hits off Danny Cox and Darryl Strawberry, the batter. We were talking about Herzog's philosophy about crowds. Whitey went to Kansas City in the middle of '75, and they were on their way to drawing $1.1 million. When he left Kansas City at the end of '79, they had drawn $2.2 million. Then he came to St. Louis. When he came to the Cardinals in 1980, the Cardinals were on their way to drawing $1.4 million. They have drawn over $2 million 4 times, including that 2.6 last year. So Herzog makes a point. It's a tribute to the success of the manager. And boy, he's got the numbers to back it up. 1-1. Ball 2.
He gives you that good Cracker Barrel philosophy, too. He says you can't draw at a funeral.
Well, I don't know about that. You know, there's a classic Red Skelton line about the late producer Harry Cohn in Hollywood, who died in a huge crowd. And Skelton said, how come the big crowd? Well, he said, give the public what it wants. 2-2 the count, and Danny Cox down 4-1 in the 3rd inning.
After Al Capone's vault, I'm ready for anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's the greatest shutout and no-hitter I ever heard of. Ball 3. Strawberry followed by Gary Carter. That's a pretty good sock in the middle. Hernandez, Strawberry, Carter. Darryl hitting .277.
This is why you can't pitch around him with Carter back there.
Hernandez doesn't go, and that's golfed right to Clark, so it's a tag play at second, and Ozzie tagged him. We were waiting for Montague to call it. Once Clark stepped on the bag, that removed the force, and Ozzie had to tag the sliding Hernandez.
Clark gave him a good ball to handle. Watch how quickly he gets rid of that ball. One step, and he fires it. And Montague waits to see if the tag is made, because it's kind of an awkward slide by Hernandez, and there you see Montague giving it that kind of undercover call.
So Jack Clark starts the double play, 3-6, and with 2 out, the batter is Gary Carter. And Carter doubled home Hernandez in the 1st inning. He might have had 2 RBIs, but the runners were not going. Remember, he hit a 3-2 pitch. Foul ball, 0-1.
We mentioned Whitey Herzog keeps a chart. You can see how rank pull the defense is. McGee in center field. The pivot man is over in left center. There's a tremendous amount of room, as you can see, in right center field. Look where McGee is over in left center field. That first base hit by Carter was in left center field, and McGee couldn't catch up with.
Whitey running his fingers through that crew cut. He has Conroy down in the pen again. And the count 1 ball and 1 strike. There's Conroy.
I asked Whitey if he goes over how to pitch these fellas. He said, I go over how to defense and stay with your strength.
Change up, hit to the hole, smothered by Pendleton, And the throw got him despite a head-first dive by Gary Carter. Excellent defensive play by Terry Pendleton to take a base hit away from Gary Carter. And watch the hustle by Carter trying to beat the throw, but he's not going to do it, even though he got the landing gear down. It's 4-1 Mets. Fans still happy. After all, the National League champions, despite down by 3, are at home, and they are still the best fielding team in the National League, and all you had to do was see those 2 dazzling plays by Terry Pendleton and the other one by Tommy Herr.
That's the one thing that's kept them really going is the defense, and Pendleton, who has made a couple of great plays already, one of the reasons. I mean, John Tudor makes no bones about it. The difference in his pitching is if I can keep it in the ballpark, I figure somebody's going to make a play. Defense very rarely goes into a slump like speed. Speed rarely goes into a slump.
You know, the most interesting thing about Thursday night's game, the Mets won at 5-4 in 10 innings. The Cardinals did not make any errors. The Mets made 4 errors in that game and still won 5-4, which is a surprise. Tom Lawless will now bat for Danny Cox. Danny has had it. Certainly Herzog has had it. And here is Lawless. Cox went 3 innings, allowed 4 earned runs and 7 hits. Lawless, who is traded by Cincinnati to Montreal and will forever be part of the trivia question. That was the Pete Rose deal. He went from Montreal to Louisville and then was acquired by the Cardinals. Strike, off speed. There's Mike Rourke talking to Danny Cox, a pitching coach trying to console as well as instruct. 0-2 to Lawless. Fastball fouled away. Still 0-2. To Tom Lawless. Out of Erie, Pennsylvania.
Good town. You ever been to Erie?
No.
Oh, you'd love it.
Why would I love Erie?
It's a great town.
Okay. Check swing. It's going to cost him. So down goes Lawless. That's the 3rd strikeout for Sid Fernandez. And with 1 out on the 3rd, Vince Coleman coming up. 4-1 in favor of the Mets. Sid Fernandez. One thing happened to him recently. The Mets were snowed out of a game with Pittsburgh. And as he said, it's the first time I ever saw snow falling. He could see snow on the mountains in Hawaii, like Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, but he had never seen it fall. Somebody said, what do you think of it? He said, I don't like it. That's why he lives in Hawaii. Here's Coleman, who walked and scored a run in the 1st inning. Stole 2nd, despite the Cardinals being down 4-0. Strike.
You don't think somebody talked to Fernandez in the dugout and said, hey, don't think out there. Just throw strikes. You got a 3-run lead. Don't get cute.
Well, he's my dark horse candidate anyway. Least known to have a big year in 1986. 1-1. Coleman seriously thinks he could steal 200 bases. But in order to do it, he's going to have to cut down his strikeouts, and he's going to have to get on the bases a lot. He's hitting .224. Four to 1 Mets, 3rd inning. If you are a historian at all, you know the Cardinals will not get 2 down no matter what happens on this weekend. 1 year ago, the Cardinals lost a 4-game series to the Montreal Expos. And then they went to work. 1-2. Chased that fastball. It seemed to be just running away. That's 3 consecutive strikeouts. 4 out of the last 5. Sid Fernandez. He's got to be as good as his control.
The last 2 strikeouts have been on fastballs. The one Ozzie Smith was a screwball. He just kind of blows it by Coleman. A lot of indecision up there. You can see he really never did shift his weight and just almost tried to foul the ball off as if to just give me another swipe at him if I can foul this pitch off. Fernandez, his control is the key. If he gets that ball over, he no doubt about his stuff.
McGee hit back to the box, remember, on a 2-0 pitch in the 1st inning. Big, slow sweeper in there for a strike. 0-1. Fernandez has matured. he mentally is tougher than he was when he first came over to the Mets. You have two fellas in deals facing each other here that will long be remembered, I think. Sid Fernandez, traded by the Dodgers. They were in desperate shape for a relief pitcher. And Willie McGee was traded by the Yankees for Bob Sykes, and that will do that. That's 4 consecutive strikeouts, 5 of the last 6 hitters, and at the end of 3, the Mets 4 and the Cardinals 1. And manager Whitey Herzog lifting Danny Cox for pinch hitter Tom Lawless, and now they bring the left-hander Tim Conroy out of the bullpen. Conroy came here with Mike Heath for Joaquin Andujar. Conroy with a record of 1-0. He's only worked a little more than 3 innings, and an ERA, as you can see, a little higher than 2.5. With Oakland 0-1, he spent the bulk of last year at Tacoma, and he was a strikeout pitcher in the Coast League. He struck out about 40 more hitters than innings pitched. So when they traded away a 20-game winner, they not only got a catcher with a great arm, they feel they have a fine young pitcher, because Conroy is only 26. Danny Heath, Ray Knight, then Howard Johnson and Sid Fernandez. 4-1 in favor of the Mets, top of the 4th inning. 4-1. It is interesting, the Mets leading the Cardinals by 2.5. They would increase that to 3.5 should they win today. Last year, it got so tough between July and late September. Davy Johnson's club and Whitey Herzog's boys were never separated by more than 3 games. 2-0. 0-3. Conroy, who was over in the minor leagues and in the American League, did not have an at-bat since high school and found himself at the plate with the bases loaded in the 17th inning in Montreal. And Floyd Yeomans went 3-2 and walked in to force over the winning run.
They gave him the take sign, 3-2.
I figured.
They did.
Yeah. Hadn't swung the bat. And then Willie McGee came up and singled home 2, and that game went a glittering. 3-1 to Danny Heath. Check swing foul. 3-2 to Danny. Heath figures to be asked with a 24-man roster to not only play for George Forster, but also come up and get some key hits a la Rusty Staub, who is no longer with the club. 3-2. Hit to dead center. A late start by McGee, but it was high enough to get under it. Davy Johnson struggling with a 24-man roster, so that he had to use pitcher Rick Aguilera as a pinch hitter. Of course, he shouldn't feel down. The same time, the Giants used Jim Gott as a pinch hitter. Montreal used pitcher Dan Schatzeder as a pinch hitter, and San Diego used Mark Thurman. So you see, it's a sign of the time. Right. Ray Knight hit into a double play in the first inning. Spent all winter in the batting cage. Wife Nancy due to deliver their second child within a couple of weeks.
When I asked Davy Johnson the difference in Ray Knight, he said, well, last year, remember, he had all those injuries. And then he came to camp trying to really prove that he was all right. This year, he's not worrying as much. He never did relax last year. You just have to change the pages when you're making out, but it was staying with him, and he's more relaxed and really feels like he belongs. And, brother, he has really shown it.
0-2. Fastball. He was late, but he did get a piece of it. So I guess you could say the days and night. D-A-Z-E with his struggle, and then, boy, did he come fighting back. And there's one reason why. First base coach Bill Robinson spent a lot of time getting Ray Knight to stand up. Ray had gotten into the bad habit of getting into a crouch, and Bill was saying, hey, you got the strongest pair of hands I've seen in a long time. Straighten up. And that's what he's doing. Straighten up, but not flying right as he strikes out. So here comes Howard Johnson. Singled in the second inning. Howard was quoted as saying, "Bad blood? Yeah, I think there's some bad blood. I know I rooted for Kansas City in the series." In the opening game at Shea with the Cardinals, it was Howard Johnson's error that helped to give the Cardinals the win, but he certainly atoned for it with a 2-run home run in the 9th inning Thursday night. The feeling is last year, you know how George Foster gets in and out of the box, and
Right.
He goes through a long ritual, and it really ticks off the pitchers. 1-1. And they said last year, the Mets felt anyway, that Danny Cox was angry over Foster taking all this time, so he hit him. It loaded the bases, and then Johnson came up and hit it out for a grand slam. Fastball popped around the plate. Mike Heath coming back.
He's got this one.
Sure has. So they're gone in order. That's the first time the Mets have been retired in order. And at the end of 3.5, 4-1 New York.
As we look at Mike Heath going underneath on that last foul ball, is almost like a different guy. Now he's got it all away. Many times on a foul ball, when you look up on a high sky, you see those little dark spots. You can see he shaded his eyes. His head never did move, and he had the beat on it all the way. On the other foul ball that he missed, I'm sure that when he looked up, those little dark spots that you pick up on a high sky kind of threw him off a little bit because he was never certain of that ball.
You know, he's not bad when you realize, too, on those balls hit up in that sky. He played 35 games in the outfield for Oakland last year. So the Cardinals have a versatile catcher. But now look at Fernandez. He's got a ways to go, but those names, of course, both former Mets. Tom Seaver and Nolan Ryan, a couple of franchise pitchers. So he's got 4 straight. He would have had 5, but Terry Pendleton went out to center. Right. Tommy Hurd, Jack Clark, and Tito Landrum, so he's wading in deep water now. This is the home of the strikeout. When Steve Carlton was with St. Louis, he struck out 19 Mets here at Busch Stadium in 1969. 1-1. A pretty good pitch. That commanded some respect. Her kind of backing out saying, well, now where did that come from?
That's the kind of pitch that makes you think a little bit, and anytime a fella's thinking in the batter's box, he's hurting.
Little pop fly. That'll break the string. Let's see if Dykstra can catch it. He does. 1 away.
He really takes command out there, Dykstra does. He moves Strawberry around, and the center fielder should. Any ball that's hit to the outfield, the center fielder is the guy who really takes control. If he can catch it, go ahead and catch it. The other 2 guys, really, they begin by saying, I will take from where I'm standing to the foul line. And the center fielder takes everything else.
The captain. So Dykstra back to the middleman position, and Jack Clark coming up. Robbed of a hit on a dazzling play by Ray Knight in the first inning. If that ball gets down the line, Cardinals score at least 2 in the inning and maybe more. So Clark lost a hit, got the RBI, and it's still 4-1 Mets in the 4th inning.
We all know what a good fastball hitter he is. And I asked Tom Niedenfuller about that. But I said to Davey Johnson, if you have to throw Clark a fastball, where will you throw it? He said, it doesn't make any difference. You can shoot a fastball, he'll hit it. And I said, but where? He said, it has to be away and hope you don't get hurt too badly.
2 balls and no strikes. Foul back. Interesting, too, about Jack Clark. He led all National Leaguers hitting on grass. And how do you do, sir? Imagine Jack Clark hit .392 on grass and only in the 230s on artificial surface. That's a shock. 2-1. Off speed, just flipped that thing in there.
He's got a unique stance in that it's a closed stance, and that back foot, when he starts, points towards the catcher, but at the last minute, he'll shift it. Now look where it's pointing. Watch when the pitch comes what happens.
All 3.
Like he puts his body in gear.
Yeah. Well, Dwight Gooden has been quoted as saying, yeah, there it is, the best 2-strike hitter in baseball.
See, if you're in a slump, that's distracting, but if you're a good hitter, it's a timing mechanism again.
Style.
Another one of those.
3-2 to Jack. And and got him with that fastball up and away. And Clark was giving. I think he was expecting something inside. That's a half a dozen strikeouts for Sid Fernandez.
Watch that foot again. There it goes. Now he kind of reached for this ball. He doesn't take that good Jack Clark swing. I mean, that was Sunday afternoon at the park kind of swing. Foul it off and give me another chance at you.
So 6 out of the 8 hitters have gone the way of Jack Clark, striking out. And here's Tito Landrum to face Fernandez. Balloon, ball 1. 1-0. Landrum is accustomed to being with winners. He's been on 3 championship clubs. Now back. He was with the 82 Cardinals, the 83 Orioles, and of course the 85 Cardinals. Two and 1. Tito Landrum, when you hear that name, you figure he is Latin, but he was born in Joplin, Missouri, and he's lived in Thailand and Japan, among other numerous places. Son of a sergeant in the Air Force. Now back 2-2.
Very popular here in St. Louis. He does so many things. In fact, he was just in a charity thing where he raised $550 by being arrested. Jail and bail, they called it. He does modeling. He's a handsome young man.
Oh, yeah, and how.
Very popular.
Fernandez twice had 13 strikeouts and twice 11 strikeout games. He's got a half a dozen so far. That's fouled away, so it's still 2-2. He can be a big winner. Look at that. 1 walk. That's the key.
That was to the leadoff man. He settled right in.
His high last year, a half a dozen walks in a game against the Phils. That's popped up. Boy, they're not having very good cuts or chasing good pitches. And a little collision as Howard Johnson shows he's a little rusty at second base and comes over and decks Wally Backman. But the shortstop made the put out, and at the end of 4, the Mets 4, the Cardinals 1. We'll be back after these messages from your local station. This has allowed 1 hit so far today, and that's a Ron Darling quote. His teammate said, even though Dwight has the best stuff in baseball, Sid will be the first player on this team to pitch a no-hitter. Well, he gave up the single to Tommy Herr in the first inning, but he has struck out a half a dozen. He's retired the last 11 in a row, and he's a pretty good hitter. In fact, the Mets have good hitting pitchers. Aguilera, who was a shortstop and third baseman in high school and in college, had the best batting average among pitchers with 20 or more at bats last year. Aguilera hit .278. Gooden led National League pitchers with 21 hits, including a home run. So what the Mets pitchers did, 5 of them pitched in $50 apiece. Darling, Fernandez, Gooden, Aguilera, and Ojeda. That's a total of $250. And the first Mets pitcher to hit a home run gets the jackpot of $250.
I wonder if we could get in there. Who'd you pick?
Fouled away. Who would I pick? I think maybe Aguilera might be the best hitter. I don't know if he has any power at all, but I'd take my chances with him.
I would pick him.
Yeah.
Gooden's a nice guy, but he doesn't have a home run swing. Although he did have one. Yeah, he had one last year.
4-1 Mets in the 5th inning. 1 ball and 1 strike to Sid Fernandez.
I went down to check to see if they were keeping speed on Fernandez. His best has been 87.
Is that right?
Yeah. 87.
Just snaking the ball, not overpowering. As you see, most of the Cardinals seem to be lunging at it. All the action in the 1st inning. Fernandez has 3 hits and 5 at-bats, and he sacrificed in the 2nd inning. He's got Hawaii weather today in the high 80s here in St. Louis. Fouled away.
He takes a pretty good cut against the left-hander. Yeah. He hangs in there.
And, of course, it's comforting, I'm sure, for Davy Johnson that he hits left-handed because that protects that valuable left arm. 2-2. Fastball, and he just missed. You know, when they got Conroy and Heath for Andujar, naturally they kind of X-rayed Andujar around here, a 20-game winner. And some of the things they found out seemed to make the trade stand up. That'll do it. That wraps him up. One away. Strikeout number 1 for Conroy, now number 2. And the batter will be Dykstra. For instance, about Andujar, the Cardinals averaged 7 runs a game for him. And after the 23rd of August, Andujar made 12 starts and won 1 game. And his ERA over those 12 games was over 6.5 runs.
Why did they do that?
They do it to say that's why we traded him.
Man won 21 games. It's just like when they talk about earned run averages. Worrell is 0-0-0, but the other guy's at 7. And the runs were on when he came in. He let him score.
Dykstra, who first tried to bunt on Danny Cox, then hit a home run, goes down here in the 5th. 4-1 Mets. Once again, we remind our viewers we'll be selecting the NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game at the conclusion of the ball game. 2-0.
He was kind of bailing out.
He was on his heels.
He was halfway looking for another one because he had that little pixie grin on his face when he got knocked down the first time, and he started to bail out before he could see the whites of their eyes.
Good one. So 2-2, the count to Len Dykstra. Tim Conroy, 25 years old, became 26 early in April. And the Cardinals are counting on him to be the sleeper in the deal.
He looks good.
2-2. Fly ball into right center field. Late start by Landrum, but McGee has a beat on it all the way. So Willie goes into left center. 2 down. Wally Backman will be coming up. We can duck in a couple of scores for you. The Yankees were going to start Ed Whitson, but he came up with an upset stomach, so they put Bob Shirley in his place, and Cleveland scored 3 in the first inning. It's 3-1 Indians in the 3rd. Chicago-Detroit scoreless in the 5th.
Do things get magnified a little bit, though, in New York, when you stop to think about it? I mean, the start by Whitson at home was a big story.
Wally Backman, a fly ball to left. Coleman started to go back. Now he has it. It's tough, of course, looking into the shirt sleeve crowd to get a good jump on the ball. The Mets are gone in order, and at the end of 4.5, 4-1 New York. Mike Heath, Terry Pendleton, and Ozzie Smith in that order. Come to think of it, Bob Goldby lives just across the river in Belleville, Illinois.
And boy, what a tragedy when he won the Masters and all the publicity went to the wrong scorecard signed by DiVincenzo, because Goldby had a great round, a great tournament to win it. It was lost in the confusion.
1-1 to count to Mike Heath, who is struggling a bit. He is 0 for 15. Of course, I tell you what put him in a slump, that 17-inning game in Montreal. He was 0 for 8 in that game.
I asked Whitey about Heath coming over, and he used the baseball line. He said, well, I'll tell you what, I hope he's got an electric razor, because if he's using blades, it's dangerous. Whitey.
He's been around long enough to keep his sense of humor. 1-2 to Heath. He pops it up. There have been a lot of pop-ups, and Wally Backman is there. You know, this also vindicates the judgment of Davy Johnson. We were talking to Davy before the game. He was saying, isn't it kind of a gamble to play Howard Johnson at shortstop? He said, I played him 5 times last year as a starter. I worked him out all spring playing shortstop, etc., etc. And then he said, besides, I don't have a ground ball pitcher. Sid Fernandez with that rising fastball, and if they hit it, most of them have been in the air. The balls that have been hit on the ground, McGee hit back to the box, and Clark hit that shot to third. Otherwise, everything else, either a strikeout or a ball hit in the air.
And talking about shortstops, you can almost put it under the category, you heard it here first. Davy Johnson is thinking about using Kevin Mitchell at shortstop.
I heard he was going to be the new third baseman. That's until Ray Knight was suddenly discovered.
But at shortstop, because he's a big guy.
Yeah.
You know what Davy says? He says he has quick feet.
cooling off. Kevin Mitchell, a glimpse of tomorrow, I guess, for the New York Mets. And it's closer and closer each day.
When you can hit, they find places for you, don't they?
Well, do they ever. 2-0 to Terry Pendleton. And that's lifted in the air to right. Strawberry will come back up for it. So the pattern continues. That little rising fastball. And the Cardinals keep popping it up. That's 13 in a row retired. And Ozzie Smith, who struck out in the second inning, coming up. Ozzie 0 for 1. He chased a bad ball in the second inning. Of course, that's more of a tribute to Fernandez because Ozzie is anything but a strikeout hitter. Struck out only 27 times all last year. Ball 1. One thing I wonder about Ozzie Smith and Tommy Herr, whether Whitey Herzog is going to play them as much as he did last year. You know, they made 158 starts. That's a lot of baseball. Hooked down in the corner. Foul ball.
I was asking Ozzie about his arm because you read so much. He had a torn rotator cuff, and you read that he was favoring it. He was taking 2 steps before he threw it. And I said, what are you saying publicly? He said, I'm saying the truth. I said, well, what is it? He said, my arm is fine. He said, I have stiffness when it's cold, but it's 100%. I said, what did you do? He said, by a stretching program, it worked out fine, and I am 100%.
How about this? In 1976, the Detroit Tigers drafted a man in the 2nd round and a man in the 7th round. The man they drafted in the 2nd round was Alan Trammell. The man they drafted in the 7th round was Ozzie Smith. And they both had sore arms at just about the same time. Imagine if they'd signed them both. Ozzie didn't sign. And, of course, he was eventually drafted by the Padres the following year and came to the big leagues. He was 2 for 3 against Gooden last night. But he could be playing in Detroit today. 3-1.
Well, he's finally arrived, though. When he signed that big contract, he became extra special because there was a lead story in the gossip column that the neighbors are upset at the fence he's trying to build. When they start getting upset at your fences, you've arrived.
3-1, and there's ball 4. A 2-out walk to Smith. And that will bring up Conroy, who, as we mentioned, had 1 at-bat since high school, and that was in the 17-inning game against Montreal. He came up against Floyd Yeomans with the bases loaded. The count went to 3-2. The Cardinals told him to take. They might as well take the bat out. And wouldn't you know, Yeomans walked him to force over the winning run.
Tell you, if you were catching right now, you wouldn't even fool around. You did 2 fastballs in the curve and hope that you see them.
That could be premature. They had to sign up his first official at-bat, maybe. One ball and no strikes. And Ozzie's going. And they're shocked to let him go. Gary Carter, who might have been surprised when Coleman scored trailing 4-0, couldn't believe Ozzie was going to go with a pitcher up there, and 2 out in the 5th.
He took for granted he was going to stay there, and I don't blame him. I think I would have done the same thing.
Slow roller. Conroy almost fell down in his follow through, and now he has an official at bat. He is 0 for 1. He has a lot of company. The end of 5, 4-1 Mets. Here's another edition of Baseball Remembered. In 1969, he posted great numbers.
He threw a lot of ground balls.
Of course, I tell you, when you come to St. Louis and you start talking about numbers, you know, I was talking about Dwight Gooden, and he pitched 9 innings, 96 pitches. Okay. Bob Gibson. I said to Gibby today, Bob, what's the greatest number of pitches you ever made in a game? He said, I pitched a 13-inning game. He said, I don't know the exact number, but it was over 200. Can you believe over 200?
He never looked at the bullpen either. It's not in his vocabulary.
Here's Keith Hernandez looking for his 3rd hit. 2 for 2. Ball 1. The number 1 hitter in the league on artificial surface, trying to pick up where he left off last year. Hitting .288. Single to center, and then lined one off Herr's glove after his foul ball got off the glove of Mike Heath and gave him the extra swing.
Just something to look for. You remember last year, his dad watching the game, set from the center field shot. He couldn't see a piece of the number, so he knew he wasn't standing right. You can see it today. There it is.
1-1. Ball 2. Tim Conroy, in his young National League career, facing one of the better hitters the league has to offer, Keith Hernandez.
He really spreads the defense, too. They are playing him pretty much straight away. Maybe in left field, they shade him towards the line.
And he drives it to center, but McGee is there. Now the Mets are starting to go out in order. Hernandez had the line drive single leading off the third. That's 9 in a row retired since the base hit. And Darryl Strawberry facing Conroy. For Conroy, if he can do a job, it'll be the first time the Cardinal bullpen has held up in a while. And of course, that had been a major strength for St. Louis last year. Slicing fly ball to left. Coleman on the run. 2 down. Last Saturday, as we see the White Sox leading Detroit 2-1, back-to-back home runs by Harold Baines and Ron Kittle for Chicago. Last Saturday in that extra inning game in Montreal, left-hander Ken Daly had 2 leads get away in consecutive innings. Thursday, in the bottom of the 9th, after Clint Hurdle had a pinch hit triple to drive in the tying runs, the Cardinal bullpen let it get away. And then this past Thursday night against the Mets, the other night, a 2-run home run in the 9th inning and the winning run in the 10th. The bullpen couldn't hold that. And it all points up the fact that Herzog can't deal Lottie, then a left-hander, then Worrell. And until we hear about Jeff Lottie, the disposition of Lottie, why, the Cardinals are going to hurt. And if he can't pitch for a while, they might have to bring back the boy they just sent out, Kurt Kepshire. Maybe. 1-1. Gary Carter. The Mets were saying they only want him catching about 125 games this year. That could be, but he's already played left field. They need him in that lineup someplace. 2-1. Mentioning at the start of the telecast about the rivalry between these two clubs, and the fact it goes all the way back, I guess, to spring training facilities. The Mets now have built up a few rivalries from some spring training skirmishes with the Philadelphia Phillies. 2 years ago, they got into quite a knockdown battle with the Cubs, as you look at Danny Heath. Last year, you might remember Bill Gullickson and the Mets. Remember that? Slow roller, it will be Pendleton in front of Ozzie to get it. Gullickson threw at Carter, and Gooden threw at Gullickson. So they're building up. And at the end of 5.5, it's still 4-1 Mets. Translate that last name, Shane, meaning beautiful, and Dienst as part of a servant or work. So a beautiful workman. Wouldn't that sum up Red Shane Dienst with the Cardinals?
Oh, that would say it all about him.
What do you think about if in word association, if I say Red Shane Dienst, anything come to mind immediately? A picture? What?
Relaxation.
He used to carry his glove until the very split second the pitcher made the pitch, and then he put the glove on.
The last out of the 46 World Series, he's got the glove off. You put it on, Red. He didn't need it, but the other guys had it on.
I'll never forget him for that.
Yeah.
Vince Coleman, Willie McGee, and Tommy Herr. And we move to the bottom of the 6th inning. All the damage done for each side in the first inning. The Mets 4, the Cardinals 1. Coleman walked, stole second, and eventually scored. In the 3rd inning, he struck out. So Vince 0 for 1. Ball 1.
Ray Knight really charges hard from third base. He's in close, you see, he's in front of that line, and he takes about 3 quick steps in, trying to take the bunt away from Coleman.
Interesting about Coleman, he was at his best batting left-handed, batting at night, and batting at home. On the road for whatever reason. In ballparks that had AstroTurf or unnatural, he hit under 200. 2-1. Sid Fernandez has allowed one hit, a single by Tommy Herr. He has struck out a half a dozen. He has walked 2. You notice all the Cardinal swings, when they miss, they stagger. The ball is always away. It must really be running and sailing on them.
The scout will put in his book, good movement on his fastball.
The kids in the ballpark trying to start a wave, trying to shake up the Cardinal bats. 2-2. 3-2. One thing for Coleman, almost half of his hits have been for extra bases, so that's cut down his opportunities as well to steal bases. Three and 2. Got him at the knees on the corner. Strikeout number 7 for Sid Fernandez.
How do you like that pitch? It looked like a breaking ball from up here. Let's see if we can tell with this shot.
Center fielder, Willie.
It was a breaking ball. 3 and 2. He had good enough control of it that he threw it for the strike and got his 7th strikeout.
So Vince Coleman has struck out twice. Now Willie McGee, who struck out once, coming up. Slice foul into the crowd down the right field line. 0-1 the count. McGee hit back to the box in the first inning. 4 runs, 7 hits for the Mets. 1 run, 1 hit for the Cardinals. A single by Herr in the first inning. Whew, there was some movement on that one. You talk about Senor Smoke. 0-2. I'll tell you what, Los Angeles will bemoan the fact they have traded him for the next 10 years in the National League.
He just got 2 strikes on McGee and then climbed the ladder with that when it was definitely out of the strike zone, and McGee chased it, and he has 8 strikeouts.
Ocho, and you can see how quiet that Cardinal bench is. As long as Fernandez throws strikes, he's virtually unhittable. The one thing the opposition wants from Fernandez is to get him wild, but that's not been the case so far. Herr has single, flied to center, fouled it back.
Just to really substantiate what you just said, Herr has swung at the first pitch and McGee swung at the first pitch, so they feel that Fernandez has good control, so why let him get ahead of you?
0-1 the count. The Mets with an outstanding pitching staff. I would have to rank them up there with Kansas City, San Diego. That's a strike. 0-2. I mean, you look at the depth that they have. It's remarkable.
Well, and they got that slump preventer, Gooden. You know that you're not going to go into a long slump with him, and almost have a built-in 2-game winning streak with him on the staff.
No balls and 2 strikes. Ball 1. We have Gooden, Darling, Aguilera. You have this kid, Sid Fernandez, Bobby Ojeda. You go down on the bullpen. They have Roger McDowell and Jesse Orozco. I mean, they are loaded. Tell me how many ball clubs have depth like that. Oh, Kansas City is great. 2-2.
As Earl Weaver said, they got deep depth.
Yeah. Not only all of that, but youth. 2-2 the count to Tommy Herr. Base is empty. The bottom of the 6th inning. Mets 4, Cardinals 1. Little foul, and he was lunging. Interesting in studying Herr last year. He took advantage of tough situations. He hit 100 points better with men on base than he did when the bases were empty. It's still a shock to find that Tommy Herb, with over 100 RBIs last year, has just one so far this year. 2-2. Popped up. It will be the third baseman, Ray Knight. So Davy Johnson said he didn't have a ground ball pitcher. He was right. He also said we're getting good pitching, hitting, and excellent defense. We'll take care of the Cardinals. Well, we'll find out, and we'll be back after these messages from your local station. When you start the day off figuring Ed Whitson's going to pitch in Yankee Stadium, chaos.
Chaos. Assy and Piniella. That's number one for Piniella. They got a pool on how many times he's going to get kicked out this year.
Danny Heath, Ray Knight, and Howard Johnson. Ground ball backhanded by Clark. Spots it behind Conroy. And Tim makes a good play. That's 12 in a row retired and 10 in a row retired by Conroy.
Clark, when he made the play, really didn't try to lead Conroy. He just, watch, he grabs the ball. And he throws it right now. Conroy makes a good play. Funny, they practice that play day after day after day in spring training. Come to game, it's like first time it ever happened.
So 12 in a row retired since the single by Hernandez. Boy, was Knight out in front of that off-speed pitch. You talk about a pool hall shot. That brought back shades of Willie Hoppy. So Conroy really fooling Knight. 2 down.
And only 2 pitches.
You put rosin on the end of your bat to hit it that way. And that'll bring up Howard Johnson.
Shortstop, Howard Johnson.
Ray, after a big night last night, has hit into a double play, struck out, and cued one back to Conroy. Which is the life of the ball player, right? The ups and the downs.
You better have more ups than downs.
Terry Leach is throwing in the Mets bullpen, perhaps just to get in a little work. Hojo is singled and fouled out, 1 for 2. Rusty Staub had an eating contest in his restaurant this winter. They tell me that Howard Johnson downed 36 ribs in 3 minutes.
He's got the secret, he says. Drink a lot of water.
When?
During, before.
How can you do it in 3 minutes? 36 ribs. 1 and 1.
The real champion is Dwight Gooden over a 24-hour period for eating.
High pop fly. It'll be Ozzie Smith. So Hojo pops it up. That's 14 in a row retired. And the last 12 by Conroy. It's still 4-1 Mets. And here's another edition of the 7th inning stretch. Mets got 4 in the first inning. The Cardinals got 1 in the first inning. Danny Cox is gone. Tim Conroy has pitched exceptionally well. But Sid Fernandez has been outstanding. And Fernandez will now be pitching to Jack Clark, Tito Landrum, and Mike Heath.
If you're Jack Clark, you got to go up there and say, I'm going to look for the fastball on the first pitch, and if he tries to get ahead of me, I'm going to rip one, and maybe I can hit one in the seats. You've got to be looking for it, because the Cardinals, they've got to disturb that big nest of termites that's in the bat rack.
Well, you know, he only hit 8 home runs at Busch Stadium last year, so this is not his favorite hitting ballpark for the long ball. He had more home runs and RBIs on the road than he had here. And he's taken all the way, and he got an off-speed breaking ball for a strike. So Fernandez and Heath are thinking right along with the Cardinals. Oh, and 1. One ball, 1 strike.
Just watching Carter's reaction, Clark must be one of those hitters who kind of maybe sneaks a peek. Watch Gary, he's just kind of looking up at him. There he goes, checking him to see if he's looking back.
Fastball that time, so he lulled him with the breaking ball and the straight change, and then as Roy Campanella called it, here comes the express, number 1.
Watch Carter check him, see if he catches him peeking. Gotta watch those hitters. Look at him.
Yep. Fastball. That time he challenged him. He came up and in with it.
You know who was the best at that I ever saw?
At what, cheating?
At fixing his cap and putting the bulbs right on your fingers.
No.
Billy Herman.
Ah, yeah.
With those X-ray eyes.
1-2 to count to Clark. Off speed. Got him. Oh, boy, is that dirty. 9 strikeouts for Sid Fernandez, with Clark getting first a fastball on the outside part, then a fastball inside. Look at this thing.
He starts twice after that. I mean, it was almost like he wanted to turn in his dance ticket. It's a wonder his shoestrings didn't break, Ben.
You talk about double clutch.
Woo!
Clark bites the dust for the second time. 9 Ks for Sid Fernandez. And here's Tito Landrum. Fly to center and popped up. Good fastball. Ooh. The interesting now, Clark went up there looking fastball and got a slow curve for a strike. Now Landrum walks up and he's zapped on the first pitch.
And not because I'm partial to catches, but give Gary Carter a lot of credit for that. He's the one who suggested it, and he's the one who's setting the pace. He's setting the flow. He's not just putting fingers down there. I mean,
I'm sure there'd be no disagreement. Fernandez is that kind of a gentle soul who will follow the veteran catcher's direction.
And Gary is just working Fernandez much like a symphony conductor. A little slow, a little faster, slower, just in and out, up and down. Put a little on, take a little off, and put the bat in the bat rack.
Yeah, it's nice to be the leader, but you got to have the musician out there to follow.
True.
And Fernandez is really following it. A little fly ball. Landrum's hips were almost in the Mets dugout. It's another case of a hitter giving and then kind of lunging and hitting a fly ball the other way. We've seen a lot of this today.
And remember, it's a left-handed pitcher against a right-hand batter where you think he would drive the ball, but there goes the middle section of that body out of there, so to speak. I was kind of groping for a word there.
Well, remember that Broadway show, Fanny?
Yeah.
Well, you could hum a few bars.
That's right. Yeah, Fanny wasn't there.
Here's Mike Keith, who struck out and popped up 0 for 2. And he pops it up. Boy, was Davy Johnson right when he said, I don't have a ground ball pitcher today. See you later in the 7th. And at the end of 7 brilliant innings for Sid Fernandez, the Mets 4 and the Cardinals 1 with 1 hit. Gary Carter, with temperatures in the high 80s, it could be even hotter than that for all we know. It was 92 here yesterday, and it's going to be somewhere up around that figure again today. Summer has arrived in the Mound City, as Gary Carter would be the first to attest. Sid Fernandez, Len Dykstra, and Wally Backman fouled away. Fernandez sacrificed and struck out. Sid is 0 for 1. Pretty good numbers, huh? 4-1 Mets. We're in the 8th inning. Right. I'll tell you, it's going to be lost in the shuffle, of course, because Fernandez has been absolutely magnificent. But young Tim Conroy is putting on a show. But he's down by 3. Foul tip held by Heath, and that will do it for Sid Fernandez. Let's get an update. We'll go to Marv Albert in New York.
This is Marv Albert in New York. In Detroit, this is Dave Collins. He goes up the middle. Lou Whitaker tearing around the bases. Play at the plate. The throw offline. Whitaker scores. Tigers take a 3-2 lead in the 7th. Back to Ben and Joe.
Well, Sparky trying to get his Tigers closer to the Yankees. The Tigers started the day 3.5 games back of New York, and the Yankees, as you know, are losing. Here's Len Dykstra. Tried to bunt, couldn't do it, and then hit a 385-foot home run to right. Next 2 trips grounded out and flied out. 1 for 3. Conroy is due to bat third when the Cardinals hit in the bottom of the 8th inning, so this is going to be his last inning of work, and they're backing him up in the bullpen. And it's Ken Daly, another left-hander. One thing thing in this heat, you immediately wonder, can Fernandez go the difference and go 9? He had 3 complete games out of 26 starts last year. That's all. Only 3. One was in Montreal, one was in Philadelphia, and the other one in San Diego. So he's pitching in the heat of St. Louis.
He's not made a lot of pitches, though, Vinny. He has a good chance of getting a complete game. I mean, it's been a fairly one-base hit. I mean, pretty obvious he hasn't made a lot of pitches.
Right. He has 2 previous starts. One he went out early, the other he went 8 innings. The reason we bring that up, the Mets, they have Randy Neiman loosening up down in the bullpen. So a 1-out pass to Dykstra. That breaks a string of 15 consecutive outs. And Dykstra goes hit-and-run foul ball by Backman down to Buddy Harrelson.
Remember, during the lineup, that's what Davy Johnson talked about. He said he's got a hit-and-run combination with Dykstra and Backman, and he'll run them.
Backman, a good average man, and Dykstra is 4 for 4 in stolen bases. With Dykstra at first, held on by Clark. Backman might very well have made some points with Davy Johnson, not with the Mets, but 3 years ago when Davy managed him at Tidewater. 0-1. Oh, good move by Conroy, and the bunt is going to be allowed to roll foul. A little collision between Heath and Conroy. Conroy put such a good move on that Dykstra was going back to first on the bunt.
Heath never saw Conroy. He was watching the ball, and Conroy would look like he might make the play, and Mike just ran over him. Heath is not even looking at Conroy, and it's a pretty good-sized collision.
Well, Conroy, who figures to be pitching his last inning, he doesn't want to end that way.
I was watching Dykstra's lead, Vin, and he did not get even his front foot on the artificial surface, and even with that, Conroy broke him back.
Yeah, he really put a good kick on him. 0-2 the count.
It's not a big lead.
Left-handers had better have that good kick, and of course, I guess it's good in the league for years and years. Steve Calden.
Oh, yeah.
That right leg had come out, and you're never quite sure where he was going with it.
It was like a snake. It would hypnotize you, freeze you. Got a bigger lead this time. See that front foot on the artificial surface. Got him. Whoa! He had him leaning.
Just the reason we didn't get him was he straddled the rubber, and that way he couldn't stride towards first, and he didn't have enough on the throw. He would have gotten him had he been able to step towards first. There he goes. Pass ball is a strike. The throw as Herr falls down, and the base is stolen, and time is called. So Backman strikes out, and Dykstra is now 5 for 5 in stolen bases.
Heath made a good throw as he puts it right over the bag. Herr slips.
You know, one thing Heath is going to find out, and he knows by now, of course, the National League runs more. One thing Herr almost did was block the base. The National League averages more than a stolen base per game, and the American League averages less than a stolen base per game. One thing for Mike Heath, if you got to come over to the National League, at least he doesn't have to look at the Cardinals. The Cardinals last year, you remember, stole 314 bases. So here's Hernandez trying to pick up Dykstra. 1-0. Mets 4, Cardinals 1, top of the 8th. There's a shocker. Trying to pick up Dykstra. And he's bird dogged by Ozzie, who's directly behind him. 2-0.
When Dykstra takes that lead off second base, you can see he's behind the cutout part at second base, and then as he takes his steps, he doesn't come in towards the pitcher a la Los Angeles Dodgers. He kind of goes out so he can make a sharper turn at third base on the base hit. Watch him kind of back up towards the outfield as he takes his lead.
2-0. Most good base runners do not like to run from a stationary position. They like to be in motion. Now, it's dangerous for a runner at second to be in motion at all towards third, to be picked off. So a lot of them are taught, okay, go back and either run towards the infield or backtrack, but you're in motion when the time comes to run. And that's what they're doing here. Right. 3-1. Take another look. Watch now.
He'll go towards the outfield to cut that angle at third base.
And Wills would teach Dodger runners to go towards the infield. But the whole theory is to be on the move when you are asked to run. 3-1. So that's ball 4 to Keith Hernandez. So Conroy, no doubt tiring. He was pitching brilliantly since picking up in the 4th inning. And now he walked a man, had a collision. Now he's walked another. He hasn't given up a hit, however, and struck out 3. Herzog is hoping that he can get Conroy through the top of the 8th and then hit for him. He has Daly down in the pen, but he doesn't want to waste an extra pitcher now.
I'm not so sure he was that anxious to pitch to Hernandez, because he threw him a lot of curveballs and breaking balls. I think this is the man he wants to go after. It'll be a tip-off on the very first pitch he throws if he's got that good smoke with it.
Darryl Strawberry single to right, hit into a double play, and flied to left. First 2 at-bats were against Danny Cox. Fouled away off to the left out of play. Back into this large crowd. We had over 45,000 last night, and another big crowd again today. Boy, can you see the Cardinals and the Mets playing double headers in the same series at Shea Stadium in New York in August? They will be literally hanging from the rafters. 0-1. Dykstra at second, Hernandez at first. We have 2 out in the 8th. The Mets 4 runs on 7 hits. The Cardinals 1 run on 1 hit. The only hit, a first-inning single by Tommy Herr. Missed with the fastball. 1-1. Giving him fastball, but he missed down with it. 2-1 to count.
No doubt that he's giving him his best pitch, which is the fastball. With Hernandez, he kind of just threw off-speed stuff out of the strike zone, as if to say, if you want to chase it, fine. If you don't, that's okay, too. Carter's the on-deck batter. It makes it a little bit tough. This is the man that Conroy wants to get. He doesn't want Carter up there with the bases loaded.
Slicing fly ball, and Vince Coleman trying to run it down in the corner, and backhands it. Fine play. Boy, was that tough. The harder he ran, the more the ball was slicing. But Coleman had it in his sights all the way, but when he hit the warning track, he knew he was running out of real estate. An excellent play that would have scored at least 1 otherwise. The end of 7.5, 4-1 Mets. For 46,000 in the house, and they saw the first inning as Len Dykstra faked a bunt and eventually swinging away hit a home run. Gary Carter doubled to score Hernandez. Danny Heap single to score Strawberry, and the Mets all of a sudden were sitting on top of a 4-0 lead. In the bottom of the first, Vince Coleman walked and stole second, took third on Tommy Herr's single, and came home as Clark was hitting into a force play, which was actually a brilliant play by Ray Knight, taking an extra base hit away from him. It is 4-1 in favor of the Mets, and despite the fact the Cardinals have done nothing but either strike out or hit the ball up in the air, Davy Johnson now decides to get more of a glove at shortstop, and Rafael Santana now takes over at short for Howard Johnson. Ball 1. Santana is at short, and you have to remember there have been 2 balls hit on the ground, and both of them were in the first inning. The real Howard Johnson could have played short today.
Yeah, with an orange glove.
Yeah. 1 ball and no strikes. Fly ball to right center field. Dykstra and Strawberry. One down. And Ozzie Smith coming up.
They're polite outs, too.
Yep.
I mean, you know, it's not where they have to run along the way or anything.
Ozzie Smith.
This telecast, presented by authority of Major League Baseball, may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. The last one-hitter against the Cardinals, May 2 years ago, Mario Soto. That was more of a dramatic one-hitter, I should say, because it was a no-hitter going into the 9th inning, and George Hendrick hit a home run. Fernandez allowed his hit in the 1st inning. Jerry White, switch-hitting outfielder, is on deck to bat for Conroy. He's playing in Japan. Ozzie struck out and walked. 9 strikeouts for Sid Fernandez. He's been brilliant. He's allowed 1 man to get on base since the 1st inning, and that was a 2-out walk to Ozzie Smith. Ground ball, what do you know? And Santana kicks it. Didn't that pick it? Huh? You make all the moves, you put in the shortstop, and the first ground ball he kicked. So it goes.
He just caught him between hops and it handcuffed him, and it's just a major league error.
So Jerry White, switch-hitting outfielder, coming up to bat for Conroy. Davy Johnson sitting down in the dugout, and there is Howard Johnson, whom he has called in to sit down. And after making that big move, Santana kicks the ball, and Jerry White coming up. Under the heading of the best laid plans of mice and men come substitute shortstops in late innings. Whoops. That thing almost went to the backstop. Ball 1.
He really overthrew that when he was going to put extra on it, and I'm sure Gary's just going to remind him about it and say, hey, look, you got this far without overthrowing. Why start now? You know, that's always a real tough job, though, for the utility man to sit there for 8 innings, and then they put you out there for one reason alone, defense, and then the ground ball comes, and you say, oh, brother.
I think it's tougher than pinch hitting because people expect more of you. People know pinch hitters. It's 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, whatever it is. But when you go in late in the game with a glove, no one expects you to make an error. Jerry White, who played in Yokohama last year and at Seibu the year before over in Japan. Foul ball. Carter coming back to the screen and can't get it. Just on the other side. Tantalizingly so.
He really did a good job getting back there, though. He found the ball first and then found where the screen was, and he got back there, just ran out of room. Watch him now. He looks for the screen. He thinks he's going to make the play, and whoops, he realizes no way.
1-1 to count to Jerry White as Gary Carter back behind the plate. White trying to get something going. A couple of other big leaguers playing over in Japan were teammates with Jerry White. You might remember 3 of them. Remember Liron Lee, pitcher Rich Gale, Steve Ontiveros. They're all playing over there at Yokohama. 1-1. Way out in front of it. 1-2.
Why don't you play catcher right now? What would you call for? He's off the bench. He just missed the slow curveball. Smoke.
Yeah.
Blow him away.
Yep. I wouldn't monkey around with him at all right now.
Put down number 1 and see if you can blow him away.
You got it. 1-2. And they got him picked off. And now Keith Hernandez trying to make Ozzie commit. They have to throw it to Sid Fernandez. And he can't make it. Bad play. And Keith Fernandez, a Gold Glove first baseman, got rid of the ball too soon. What Hernandez should have done, if he fakes once and makes Ozzie commit, okay. But watch, Keith will come right out of the play now. He's finished. And now he can't handle it. Look at the big guy make a 360, but he's too late.
And a good call by Dutch Renner. He really slides under the tag as Fernandez really does a bad dance act.
You know, the biggest disappointment I had as a kid broadcaster looking at National League and Major League games every day, how badly they do rundown plays. And you know what? It's gotten worse.
Well, and they practice it. It's really a two-toss play. Once Hernandez got rid of the ball, he should have made the tag. And where was Ozzie going?
He was just picked off. And that, of course, is a tribute to Stottlemyre and all the hard work this spring with Fernandez's move. 2-2. Of course, we saw Coleman steal in the first inning, but now we're in the 8th with 1 out. Fouled away.
I'll say this for the Cardinals. Their game plan is to run, and they run. They come to the ballpark ready to run, and they just continue. Scoreboard doesn't tell them a thing.
Ozzie stole a base, you remember, in the 5th inning against Fernandez. Two and two to the pinch hitters. Jerry White, Vince Coleman on deck. 4-1 Mets, bottom of the 8th, 1 out, and they count 2 balls and 2 strikes.
What a lead by Smith.
Both feet on the rug. That's really daring you. Usually, a pitcher is like Pavlov's dog. He'll begin to salivate when he hears the bell. Well, the bell rings when the runner touches the rug with 1 foot. Never mind both.
But that's really a one-way lead that Ozzie has, because with the first move by the pitcher, you could see him leaning back to first base. I mean, many times a base runner would use that one-way lead, get an extra big lead, and then just kind of lean back.
3-2. Ozzie doesn't go. Ground ball to third. Knight down to Bachman, who slipped, but in the act of throwing, so the runner is out. Bachman lost the ball while in the act of throwing, and then landed heavily on his left leg. So the runner is out, and Bachman is hurt.
Well, the lead by Ozzie Smith paid off, and then it prevented the double play. He didn't go out of his way to make the slide. It was right there. You always worry about the knee. Here it is again. So Knight gives him a good ball to handle. He's ready to make the pivot right there. He's standing there. Ozzie just went straight in after him. The elbows high and armed. It was really not a slide. It was a football takeout.
And you can hear the crowd chanting Ozzie, Ozzie, as they try and put another log on the rivalry. Ozzie, of course, an infielder, just going straight in at the bag. And he got a good chunk of Bachman, who, by the way, is evidently okay, but he does have a bruised leg, I'm sure.
Yeah, but that'll be one of those you catalog. I mean, it's true that he was there. Now, watch. Bachman is there, so he's vulnerable, but watch how Ozzie goes into him. It's not a slide.
All right. Hey, if you're Vince Coleman coming up, are you expecting to go down?
Not really. I think that the IOU is on Ozzie Smith. There's a good shot of it. You can see it was really not a slide, although Bachman was vulnerable. But it's one of those things you catalog and you say, okay, pal, you're going to be in this neighborhood, too.
Which, of course, you admire when one infielder knocks down another, because you know he's going to be given the opportunity for a reprisal and he's not afraid of it.
That's right. Oh, he knows that the IOU's out.
2 down, and here's Coleman. Right. Coleman walked, stole second, scored the Cardinal run in the first inning, struck out in the 3rd, struck out in the 6th. Sid Fernandez pitching a one-hitter with 2 out in the 8th, and the Mets leading the Cardinals 4-1. Jerry White at first, held on by Keith Hernandez. Off speed. 1-1. Two and 1 the count. Sid Fernandez trying to get Coleman and end the inning. He has Willie McGee on deck. Remember, the inning is alive only because of the error by Rafael Santana. Otherwise, it's a 1-2-3 inning. And Fernandez is in the cool of the dugout, as cool as it gets here. Now he's behind, 3-1 the count. Three and one to Coleman. Hernandez has walked only 2. Coleman in the first inning and Smith in the 5th. Foul back and out of play. Did that look like a borderline pitch to you, that fastball up and in?
It was not a good strike. It indeed was a strike.
That might have been ball 4. Instead, it's 3-2. Take a look. He was somewhere up around the letters, depending upon Lee Wyer's strike zone. 3-2 the count. Ready to go is Jerry White from first. Hernandez not holding. Got him. And that is 10 strikeouts for Sid Fernandez. Well, Ozzie Smith was right in the middle, the eye of the storm on that play with Backman. His quote, bad blood? Well, there's nobody over there that I hate. I just wish they'd give us our due. At the end of 8, Mets 4, Cardinals 1. Cardinal cap, don't you look grand? And a reminder right after baseball, the Liberty Mutual Legends of Golf, and legends they are. That'll be as soon as we're finished here. We'll go to Austin, Texas to bring you the premier senior event. Now to the 9th with Gary Carter. Ken Daly on the hill now, picking up for Tim Conroy. The left-hander will be pitching to Carter, Heap, and Knight. High foul should go out of play. Heath is not going to quit on it, however. It's well back into the crowd. That'll give us a chance to tell you that Conroy went 5 innings, did not give up a hit. He walked 2. Struck out 4. Well, Conroy does a great job, but Fernandez has been absolutely brilliant. 10 strikeouts in 8 innings. Shot foul down the line, out of play, and the count 1-2. There is Sid Fernandez trying to hold on to a one-hitter. The last one-hitter for the Mets, a complete game. Dwight Gooden in 1984. The last time the Mets could sweep 3 from the Cardinals was June of 1984. Just missed. And should the Mets win today, their lead would be 3.5 games, and that was in July of 1984. So George Foster has strawberry-colored glasses, I'm sure. 4-1 New York in the 9th. 2-2 in the dirt. The big guy in the Cardinal bullpen, but the trouble is he's been carrying the load all by himself, and that's not what Whitey Herzog wanted. Todd Worrell, one of the brilliant young pitchers in the National League. The Mets have an answer to Worrell and Roger McDowell. 3-2. Ground ball, but look where Herr was stationed, and Carter hit the ball right to him. So Gary goes 1 for 4.
Stationing players like that just doesn't happen. And if you went into the clubhouse and saw what Whitey does before the game, the pitcher of the next day sits in the stands and charts every pitch and what happens. And then Whitey takes the notebook, and with different colored pencils, he draws a line as to what each hitter did. And it sets up a trend. And it was really interesting to see the one on Carter and the one on Hernandez especially.
Well, here's Danny Heap. He's 1 for 3. Big chopper up the middle. Ozzie behind the bag, and it takes a bad hop when it hit the dirt. He thought he was going to be in position, but then the ball squirted through. So Danny is 2 for 4 as he bounces it up the middle.
Ball takes that kangaroo hop. Ozzie thinks he's going to make a play until it hits right there, and then it's by.
Third baseman, Ray.
The one-out single will bring up Ray Knight. It is 4-1 New York. Looking ahead, the Cardinals in the bottom of the ninth will have Willie McGee, Tom Herr, and Jack Clark. Knight has had a tough day. He hit into a double play, struck out, and was so far out in front of a Tim Conroy change that he cued the ball like in a pool hall right back to the box. 0 for 3. Four runs, 8 hits, 1 error for the Mets. 1 run, 1 hit, 1 error for the Cardinals. The 1 hit, a single up the middle in the first inning by Tommy Herr. How about that progression? Knight, who has had so many physical problems, has worked hard to come back. And come back he has. He did not hit well at all against left-handers last year. He hit 149 against left-hand pitching. That's all. $149. On deck, Rafael Santana. Ken Daly last year faced the Mets. He faced 10 batters and he struck out 5 of the 10. So he can have a strikeout pitch once in a while. Popped in the air. Knight was tied up and didn't get around on it at all. And Tommy Herr is there. 2 down. So Daly disposes of Knight and Rafael Santana coming up. You might remember Ken Daly. He had 2 saves against the Dodgers in the League Championship Series. And he was the only pitcher in the World Series who appeared in 2 or more games and wasn't scored on.
Rafael Santana.
An Idaho boy who went to school at the University of Portland. Here's Santana. We told you Todd Worrell in the Cardinal pen, and the Mets answer now with their ace right-hander, Roger McDowell. 1-0.
I'm sure when Danny Cox looks at this game, he's got to be thinking a whole lot about that change of pace that seemed to get him in trouble in that first inning.
Throw down to first, not in time. Rafael Santana, one of 8 Major League shortstops from the Dominican Republic, which is the major export of the islands, I guess. Mariano Duncan, Jose Uribe, Tony Fernandez, Raul Ramirez, Julio Franco, Alfredo Griffin, Andres Thomas.
Some pretty good ones.
Incredible. Big chopper to third. Pendleton casually to Clark. So they lead Danny Heap with single. And at the end of 8.5 innings, 4-1 Mets with McGee, Herr, and Clark coming up.
Because of regulation.
And he looks like he's a little ticked off at one of his employees by the name of Vince Coleman. Coleman, the leadoff man, has struck out 3 times, but as we mentioned, when he struck out in the 8th inning, it also looked like he went after what would have been ball 4. And I think Herzog is saying to Coleman, look, you're not Babe Ruth, you're in the leadoff role, you're going to have to cut down on those strikeouts, and you're not going to do it chasing bad balls. A brief moment of anything but glamour in the life of the big league. So McGee, Herr, and Clark in the bottom of the 9th, 4-1 Mets. Fouled away. Do you get chewed out much? Seriously.
Well, as a catcher, I mean, I guess it goes with the turf because you get managers, I don't care what you call, if the guy hits it, it's the wrong pitch. So you got a lot of that. I mean, you'd have to bite your tongue, and it would cost you if you popped off.
Ground ball hard under the glove of the diving backman. Well, that is hit number 2. Whether it means the storm signals are up or not, it remains to be seen. We'll take another look. Just eluding backman's dive.
It got out there in a hurry, and it was under his glove as he was diving.
So the batter will be Tommy Hurst. Single, fly to center, and popped up. 1 for 3, and Davy Johnson going out to the mound. You know, just to finish, we have the luxury of time here as to why Herzog would be talking to Coleman. You have to look back at Coleman's record and realize that he has struck out more than 100 times 3 times. He led the league at Macon. He struck out 145 times. At Louisville, 101 times. And last year, he led the league when he struck out 110 times. So now, Whitey is starting to run short of patience. His Cardinals might be on the edge of losing 6 in a row, and we caught him chew out Coleman. We also see Sid Fernandez leaving, and Roger McDowell will be brought in to try and quiet any possible 9th inning uprising. It is 4-1 New York. We're in the bottom of the 9th inning, nobody out, and we'll be back right after this.
Complete games, but I think that's a couple of things. Not so much Fernandez as his depth and strength of that bullpen, and I also think the complete game has become the dinosaur of baseball.
Well, he went 8 brilliant innings, allowed 1 run, 2 hits, 2 walks, and 10 strikeouts. And the sinker baller McDowell gets a strike. 0-1. Tommy Hurst singled in the first inning, fly to center, and popped up. McDowell has appeared in 4 of the Mets' last 5 games. He had last night off when Dwight Gooden pitched the shutout. 0-1. But where you saw a lot of balls hit in the air back of Sid Fernandez, now you're looking for ground balls from McDowell. And a little fist job inside third and down into the Mets bullpen. On his way to third is McGee, and they will wave him in. Holding at second is Hurst. And it is 4-2 New York. And the big guy, Jack Clark, coming up. The run is charged to Fernandez. And actually, Hurst didn't hit it hard. He fisted that ball and hit it inside out.
Here's an interesting situation. You got first base open, the tying run is Jack Clark in the batter's box. Clark is the one guy who can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And in every clubhouse meeting, you always talk about the one guy you don't let him beat you, don't let him tie you. So McDowell has to make sure he gets Clark to go for his pitch. He can't give in to it, even though he is the tying run.
Jack Clark hit into a force play, struck out twice, and takes ball 1. It is 4-2 New York, and the Cardinals trying to get off the floor here in the bottom of the 9th. There's Jesse Orozco in the Mets pen in case there is a 10th inning. Missed again, ball 2.
Oh, he's going to pitch carefully to him. That's the kind of situation I've gone to it before. The old ballpark in St. Louis with Shane Dees hitting second. Many times he'd hit a ball off the screen, and Buzzy Wares would hold him at first base so they wouldn't pitch around Musial.
So Davy Johnson sweating out Roger McDowell now. A drive into left field and deep. Looking at it is Heath. It's off the wall. In comes the run on a 380-foot single by Jack Clark to make it 4-3 New York.
He's got a little groin pull. That's why he wasn't running. But I tell you, McDowell, that's not good pitching when the one guy who can hit it out of the ballpark comes that close to hitting it out. That's not what Davy Johnson wanted. And now they're going to have to settle this young man down.
Clark is looking over at the dugout. I think there's going to be a runner for Jack as we take another look. It was not a home run. It didn't come that close to the yellow line. You can see Danny Heath was ready for the Karen instinctively and immediately, and will have a runner. Jose Oquendo will run for Clark.
He hit that ball so hard with overspin on it, he never really got under it. It was the kind of a ball Ted Williams used to hit so many times. It was a sinking line drive, and it about carried out of here, which gives an indication of how hard he did hit it.
So Sid Fernandez is hoping that his brilliant effort will not disintegrate before his eyes. He can only win the game. He can't lose it. He was charged with 2 runs. Remember the leadoff single by McGee, and Davy Johnson hooked him. And then Tommy Herr got a fluke double inside third off McDowell, and Clark almost hit it out of the park. So here is Landrum. Slide to center, pop to short, slide to right. And Johnson really sweating now in the Mets dugout. The bunt is fouled away.
And this game, I think, is pretty typical of these Cardinals as we look at Whitey Herzog's inning, that they're not hitting, and yet defense has kept them close. We've got a one-run ball game with the tying run on base.
Don't forget, in the last 21 games between these two clubs, there have been 8 extra inning contests and 12 games decided by 1 run, and this could be the 13th. 0-1, the count to Tito Landrum. On deck, Mike Heath. That missed. 1 ball, 1 strike. Boy, they're really putting a squeeze on him. Fernandez dying a little bit in the dugout. He struck out 10 and allowed 2 hits. And he is leading for the moment 4-3. And his game is in the hands of Roger McDowell. These are the men on the bench that Whitey Herzog has available. Now remember, he has only left-hand hitters, and the Mets have a Roscoe in the bullpen. 1-1. Foul the bunt back. 1-2. Jose Oquendo, who at one time was in the Mets organization and played with the Mets, but never hit enough, is now trying to carry the tying run against the Mets. Santana and Knight, Heap, Dykstra, and Strawberry. Carter behind the plate, and McDowell picking up for Sid Fernandez. 1-2. He's bunting and got it down. In fact, he's going to beat it out.
You got quite a conversation going on at third base between the coach and Mike Heath, as the Cardinals, they've just hung in there with defense until where they nitpick you until they're right there. Now Landrum really squares around, pushes it past McDowell, and once it gets right there, it's in no man's land because Landrum is going to beat it easily with no play.
And remember, there were 2 strikes on him. A 2-strike bunt for a base hit, the 4th consecutive hit in the inning, still nobody out, and now the Mets must look for the bunt from Mike Heath with Terry Pendleton on deck. It almost hit him. Ball 1. Imagine the Cardinals had a base hit in the first inning, nothing else, and now they get 4 consecutive hits in the 9th.
Hernandez at first base is really charging hard because he knows that Heath will try, at least should be bunting towards third. He wants to make a play. Knight is holding back. And I'll tell you, no trick plays now because they've got too many people moving around.
Well, Whitey Herzog summed it up best talking about the Mets and the Cardinal games. He said, we play October games in April, and they are playing an October game now. It is 4-3 Mets, and Herzog's club trying to come back, and Johnson trying to hang on. Got the bunt, but it's McDowell with a play to third, and they get a force. Good play by McDowell and Knight, and they get the force on Oquendo.
McDowell gets off the mound in good shape. It was not towards the line enough, and Hop is right to McDowell. Had a little bit of a problem, but he was there in good shape and easy force. See him breaking towards the line. It's the second grab he has to make. Knight never did charge from third base. He was going to let McDowell and Hernandez handle it. Here comes Davey Johnson again. He may make a move.
Now, as we said, everyone available. Of course, Pendleton switches. And he's going to bring Orozco in. That turns Pendleton around. That takes 3 steps away from him and going to first base. And as we showed you, all of the hitters available to Herzog on the bench are left-handed. McDowell goes a third of an inning, allows 3 hits and a run, and of course he's not out of the woods. He leads by 1, but the runners on base belong to him. We'll be back after this. The starter who left with a 3-run lead, and on the left the relief pitcher who has almost let it get away. And now it'll be up to Orozco and Pendleton with 1 out in the 9th inning. And there's a shot. Steve Santana, double play. The game is over.
The reaction by the Mets on the mound is amazing. It is an October game being played in April because they saw this one slipping away. And look at the reaction of those Mets. With 1 pitch, Orozco gets the job done. Here it is again. Ball is well hit, but Backman diving. Santana not satisfied with 1 out, guns at the first. Pendleton slides. Dutch Renard on top of the play. And what an ending to quite a ball game, Ben.
The Mets were not only very good, they were very lucky because that ball hit the side of the mound. If it doesn't hit the mound, it's for sure into center field. But it hit the mound, and the double play is over, and Fernandez has his win. The Major League Baseball Game of the Week has been brought to you by Miller Lite. For great taste, there's only one light beer. By Honda Power Equipment, lawnmowers, lawn tractors, and portable generators made to last. By Armor All, it's the finishing touch every time you wash your car. And by AC Delco, the smart parts. Well, this week's NBC Miller Lite player of the game would have to be Sid Fernandez. And Miller Lite happy to present a check for $1,000 in the name of Sid Fernandez to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. An exciting game finishing up with a game-ending double play. Next week, it'll be Reggie Jackson and the California Angels, the Milwaukee Brewers, or for others, the Atlanta Braves travel to Philadelphia. Coming up next, the legend of golf from Austin, Texas. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed it. The Mets nipped the Cardinals 4-3. For Joe Garagiola, this is Vin Scully from Bush.
Every indication has